Greetings viewers and welcome back. It's actually finally time to get some paint on this model. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to put a little bit of a base coat on the base today and on my model. So for the model, as a refresher, I'm using Apple Barrel's Golden Yellow for the main color of his armor. I'm also, for the base, on the portion that I'm going to do today is going to be Reaper Paint's Earth Brown. I'll probably start with the base first, since that'll be a little bit easier, I think, to just slop the paint on there. Alright, so my intentions are this area of the base, where it's just the base itself, I'm going to paint white so that when I put the snow on here it probably will look a little bit better, but this area that actually gets glued to the base I'm going to do in brown, and then obviously the metal colors, the brass, probably going to do like a Blood Raven color for that Space Marine helmet right there. But we're just going to slap the brown paint on, and I don't really care what it gets on because I'll have to come back and do the touch-ups. When you're doing your base coat, you're just trying to get your main color on there. You're not really worried about those fine details. If I wanted to take 2 hours to get this base coated, I could, and I could just paint around everything, but just like this concrete slab here, if I get some brown on there, it's fine. I can go back when I'm coloring that, the gray color I'm going to use, and kind of trim it out a little bit better. Right now, I just want some color on this thing. And the other reason kind of for doing that too is to make sure you don't miss anything, because if I try and cut around these colors here and then I go back when I'm painting, let's say, this metal plate, and I've missed something, now I've got a white spot in the middle. Then I have to decide, well, which color am I going to sacrifice and paint over to make sure that I get it. So I just don't care, and I'm going to slop the paint on everything. And as thin as this is going on, it looks like I might end up needing to do a second coat of it, just to make sure I actually get some good coverage. But I will worry about that once it's dry and I've had a chance to look at it. Always make sure you rotate the model in just about every possible direction, because it's very easy for your brush bristles to miss things. If they're coming at a certain direction and then you turn at it and look at it from this way, you'll see white spots, like right in there. Then you just kind of stab the bristles in there to make sure we fill in those little gaps. I don't want any white showing. I'd rather slop brown all over places that I don't want brown later than having white spots showing through. Alright, I think that looks good for a first coat. Once this is dry, I'll look at it, and depending on how light it is, I probably will need to come back and do a second coat. But for now, we can let that sit, and then we can go ahead and start putting some yellow on this guy. Alright, so this Apple Barrel paint is a little thick, so I am going to dilute it some. Yellow is also kind of a really weird color to paint with. Usually it does not cover very well, so you may end up needing multiple coats if you use yellow for something. I'm just putting a couple drops of water in there. So again, we'll just have to wait for this to dry and then come back and check it out and see what we're working with. So we're just going to stir that water into the paint here, mix it up nice and good. I don't want it too runny, but I also don't want it really gloppy on there, because when the gloppier the paint is, as you start moving it around, it'll kind of keep the brush strokes, and then somebody that's looking at your model is going to look at it and they're going to see exactly where you ran your brush over it. Give that a shot. So when it comes again to prioritizing things when you're base coating stuff, so for example, on this model, like I said, I want to get kind of my lowest layer. I don't really care. I'm just slopping paint around. If we look at him and his face in here, so I want to paint his skin blue, but I want the main armor color to be yellow. Well, if we're looking straight down in here, underneath his chin, where this mandible piece sticks out of his armor, I want that to be yellow, but I want his skin blue. If I paint his skin blue first as my base coat, and then I try and get past that to get the yellow down in here, I'm gonna ultimately get yellow paint on his face, which is pointless. So right now, I'm going to take the yellow paint and shove it down in there and fill all that in, and then it'll be easier later to come in with a blue brush and just be paying attention to what I'm doing and paint around. And maybe if I bump something else, that'll be fine. I can touch that up as I paint back out from inside of there, but I cannot get down and past him in here without touching that face and expecting to make sure everything's yellow. So I don't want someone to pick this up and look at it and see, oh, well, nobody will look in there, and then there's kind of paint slopped all over the place. Other things to be considerate of here is, so this portion right here is actually like his legs where his pants are. There's even like a little ripped bit here, so that should be his blue flesh color. So as I'm slopping yellow paint around here, I'm inevitably going to get it on there. But I have a little bit better access to this, and if I'm not worried about painting these cords and this cloth here right away, I can still get in there. I can paint that brown, try not to slop all over my yellow here, but I can work my way from the bottom layer out. Things such as this area up underneath all these shoulder pads, I'm just going to be shoving yellow paint everywhere to make sure I cover everything. I don't want to see any white again, and I can kind of pick out the parts later on and say, well, I want that to be yellow, but I don't want that, so then I can kind of focus my attention a little bit with a finer tip brush and go back and again work my way out. But I don't want any white showing. When I rotate this model around and I'm looking at it, I don't want any white showing. If maybe a part of the backpack under here is yellow that's not supposed to be and I miss it, that's fine. That's a lot better than white primer showing through because I wasn't paying attention and completely missed something. So I'll stop yapping now and we'll go ahead and put paint on this. I think this color is going to it's going to look good once we dull it down a little bit. Obviously, they're probably not going to be running around in bright, shiny armor. Maybe when they first built it, it was a little bit looking nice, but after all these wahs across the galaxy, I don't think it's going to be nice and shiny. So once we get to the step with the washes and detailing, I think we're going to make this look a lot better. So I'm not trying to win any golden demon awards by painting this model. So again, as long as I've got yellow paint under here, if somebody picks this model up and looks at it and something again in there, maybe I can't quite get to later on to even paint it. It's a part that's obviously supposed to be something other than yellow, but I can't quite get to it. To be honest, I'm not worried about it. If someone's picking up my model and looking at it in that close a detail, well, I don't know. I don't know what to tell them. But maybe if I was trying to paint this thing perfect, absolutely every single bit, then I probably wouldn't be painting it while it's assembled. All the arms would be painted separate so I can actually access everything and make sure to get every specific detail part painted exactly the way I want it. But if there's a piece of his arm under here that I can't quite get to later on, but it's yellow and it's washed and it blends in with everything else, nobody's probably really going to notice. Most people that look at this thing may look at it and go, oh, that looks really cool, and then they move on with life. So I'm not that concerned about it. Oh no, I got yellow on his skin, see? Not a big deal. Oopsie. Don't do that. This thing's expensive, I don't want to break it. This model definitely would be much easier to paint disassembled. I don't like doing that. I don't even know how I would have pinned these arms on here with the way that the legs went together. I lucked out, but there's not really anything that I would have been able to, like no meat inside the plastic there that I could have pinned them to. And I don't like super gluing painted models because one, you'll get the fumes where it makes that little white powdery residue, and I really don't want that ruining my model. And again, two, I didn't really have anywhere to pin it, so it would have made life even more difficult. And magnets wouldn't really be an option because these shoulder pads have to go on after the arms are attached, and it would just kind of be a pain in the butt. So I figured I would just give it a go like this. Perhaps somebody has some other creative ideas of how to get that done, but I just couldn't quite get there with this, and I was trying to go ahead and get this guy painted up and get this video filmed for you so it doesn't take me 2 years to get it out. I think that color's coming out nice. That'll look good once we get it washed and detailed. All right, I think you guys get the idea. I'm going to finish some more of this off camera just so that I can get a little bit closer look without the camera being in my face while I'm trying to look at it. One of the other things that I'm going to do is so that I can kind of practice the weathering that I want to do on this without practicing on the model is I've primed up part of the sprue that this guy came off of. And I'm just going to go ahead and kind of base coat it and throw yellow paint on it, so then that way when I get to the point where I'm trying to decide what I want to do with the armor, and maybe if I want to see if a different wash that I think may look better than another, I can slap that on here and not have to worry about practicing on and or ruining my model or slapping multiple coats of paint trying to cover up things. And I can just use this as a kind of a test and a guide and see what it's going to end up looking like and kind of compare it to the model and figure out if I like how it's going to turn out or not. So I'm going to put a bunch of yellow paint on this thing, and when we come back we'll get started on the next color and hitting some of the other areas on this model, because I know you guys are here to see me paint it and not show you a bunch of gray plastic or just slap one color on there. So we will get right to it. All right, so it took several coats to get this thing where I wanted it. I had to do lots of stopping and putting this guy down, let him dry, come back, pick up, and just kind of turn them in every single possible direction that I could. And every time I came back and looked at it, I found more spots that I was really confused how I missed. But aside from dunking this thing in a bucket full of yellow paint, I did the best that I could trying to reach all the areas that I thought were important. And aside from like the metal bits or the cables and things that I know aren't going to need to be yellow, and the backpack's going to be all metal parts and different colors, so I wasn't worried about that. So that's taken care of. Same thing with the base. It took 3 coats of this brown color just to make sure I got in everywhere and there wasn't anything that I was going to miss, because I really don't want to have to go back and put a tiny little dab of brown on something to make it actually look decent. So since this base is actually the easiest to get to, I am going to actually start painting this first and get this done so I can be happy with it, since the model itself is going to take quite a bit of work, and this is going to require a few less colors than the model itself and a little less detailing. So then once this is set, I can put it aside and we'll get cracking on the main model. So for now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bust out my gray, and I'm going to start painting this column and some of this busted concrete that's here inside the brown that's kind of starting to blend in there. We've also got a Space Marine helmet here with a headshot on it. We've got some brass casings that are sprinkled all around here, rocks. The metal plates, there's little pieces of barbed wire here, rebar, barbed wire, whatever it is, sticking out. So we've got to put those metal colors, but overall a lot less colors and detail is going to be required than the model itself.